What if I told you that somewhere out there, hidden beneath centuries of dust and deception, lies one of history's greatest lost treasures? Not gold plundered from ancient tombs or jewels stolen from sunken ships, but a fortune so vast, so shrouded in mystery, it could rewrite everything we know about power, faith, and the secrets of the medieval world. This is the legend of the Knights Templar, a brotherhood of warrior monks who rose from humble beginnings to become the bankers, the protectors, and ultimately the victims of their own unimaginable wealth. By the early 1400s, they were gone, wiped out in a single, brutal night, but their treasure, it vanished without a trace. Picture this, a network of underground vaults, whispered to stretch from the catacombs of Paris to the rocky shores of Scotland. Inside, chests overflowing with gold, sacred relics rumored to hold divine power, and documents so explosive they threatened empires. The Templars weren't just rich, they were untouchable. Until suddenly they weren't. King Philip IV of France, drowning in debt, saw their wealth as the ultimate prize. On Friday the 13th, 1307, he launched a surprise attack, arresting hundreds of Templars in a single dawn. But when his men tore through their strongholds, they found almost nothing. The treasure had disappeared. So where did it go? That's the question that's haunted historians, treasure hunters, and conspiracy theorists for 700 years. Some say it's buried beneath a chapel in France, protected by cryptic symbols. Others believe it was smuggled to Scotland, hidden in plain sight beneath the foundations of Rosslyn Chapel. There are even whispers that the Templars sailed across the Atlantic, burying their hoard in Oak Island's infamous money pit. But one thing's certain, this isn't just a story about gold. It's about betrayal, hidden knowledge, and a shadowy legacy that might still be out there, waiting to be uncovered. So grab your map and your curiosity, because today we're diving deep into the mystery of the Knights Templars' lost treasure. The story of the Knights Templar begins not in a castle or a royal court, but on the dusty roads to Jerusalem. In the year 1119, 9 knights led by a French nobleman named Hugues de Payens vowed to protect Christian pilgrims traveling through the Holy Land. These men weren't just soldiers, they took monastic vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, becoming the first warrior monks of their kind. At first, they had no grand headquarters, no vast wealth, just a single base on Jerusalem's Temple Mount, a site so sacred it gave them their name, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. But within decades, this humble brotherhood would transform into something extraordinary. What changed? The Templars became the medieval world's ultimate problem solvers. Pilgrims needed safe passage, the Templars guarded the roads, travelers feared robbery. The Knights invented an early version of travelers' checks: deposit your gold in Paris and withdraw it in Jerusalem with nothing but a coded note. Kings and nobles, impressed by their discipline and loyalty, showered them with land, castles, and privileges. But the real secret to their power wasn't just swords or piety, it was their revolutionary banking system. By the 13th century, they'd built a financial network spanning Europe, managing fortunes for everyone from merchants to monarchs. They loaned money to kings, funded wars, and even safeguarded the treasury of France itself. Their wealth wasn't just gold, it was influence. Popes granted them unprecedented independence, answering to no authority but the Vatican. Their lands produced vast incomes from crops, mills, and vineyards. And here's the twist: because they technically took vows of poverty, everything they owned belonged to the order itself, not individual knights. This made them untouchable until it made them a target. By the time King Philip IV set his sights on them, the Templars weren't just a military force. They were the closest thing the medieval world had to a multinational corporation, with whispers of secrets buried deeper than their gold. Think about walking into a medieval city with nothing but a piece of parchment, no gold, no armed guards, and yet being able to access a fortune. That was the everyday magic of the Templars' financial system. These warrior monks didn't just protect pilgrims, they revolutionized how money moved across continents, their most brilliant invention, the letter of credit. A merchant could deposit funds at a Templar preceptory in London, receive a coded document, and then redeem its value in Jerusalem, Acre, or any of their hundreds of outposts. No need to risk carrying sacks of coins through bandit-infested forests. It was like an early form of international banking, complete with encryption scratch marks, wax seals, and signatures only Templar officials could decipher. But their financial genius didn't stop there. Kings quickly realized the Templars weren't just reliable, they were indispensable. When Richard the Lionheart needed funds for the Third Crusade, it was the Templars who arranged the loan. When French nobles teetered on bankruptcy, the order stepped in as both lender and financial advisor. At one point, they even managed the French royal treasury, effectively becoming the kingdom's central bank. Their network stretched from the vineyards of Bordeaux to the spice markets of Cyprus, generating income through a web of estates, tolls, and even shipping ventures. Here's what made them truly untouchable: their reputation for incorruptibility. While local rulers might embezzle or default, the Templars honored every transaction. Their vow of poverty wasn't just spiritual, it was their greatest PR weapon. Who would you trust with your life savings? A king who might spend it on another palace, or monks who swore to own nothing personally? That trust let them amass holdings so vast they essentially became a shadow government. At their peak, they owned nearly 9,000 estates across Europe, including entire towns and ports. Yet their most valuable asset wasn't land or gold, it was information. Templar preceptories doubled as intelligence hubs where merchants, diplomats, and spies exchanged news. They knew which kingdoms were solvent, which rulers were desperate, and where the next war might erupt. That knowledge gave them leverage no modern bank could match. When King Philip IV borrowed heavily to fund his wars, the Templars didn't just hold his debts, they held his secrets, and that, more than any chest of coins, may explain why he turned on them so brutally. Because the real treasure wasn't just what they owned, but what they knew. Friday the 13th, 1307, a date that would live in infamy for the Templars. Before dawn broke across France, royal officials moved in near-perfect secrecy, armed with sealed orders from King Philip IV. By sunrise, hundreds of knights, men who had dined with kings and financed crusades, found themselves dragged from their beds in chains. The charges, heresy, blasphemy, and unspeakable rituals whispered in the shadows. But this wasn't justice, it was a meticulously planned ambush. The accusations read like something from a fevered nightmare. The Templars, Philip claimed, spat on the cross during secret initiation rites, worshipped a mysterious idol called Baphomet, and engaged in twisted ceremonies under cover of darkness. Some confessions were extracted through torture, with knights forced to admit to crimes no evidence ever supported. Others, like Grand Master Jacques de Molay, refused to break even as the king's men tightened the screws. The truth, Philip's motives were colder than the dungeon walls. Deep in debt to the order, his treasury emptied by wars and failed policies, he saw the Templars' wealth as the ultimate solution. And with Pope Clement V, a hesitant ally under his political thumb, the stage was set for one of history's greatest betrayals. What happened next was a masterclass in propaganda. Philip flooded Europe with lurid tales of Templar depravity, turning public opinion against them overnight. Their reputation for piety became a liability, their secrecy proof of guilt. Within weeks, the arrest spread beyond France as other rulers, some genuine believers in the accusations, others eyeing Templar assets, joined the purge. But here's the twist: despite ransacking Templar strongholds, Philip found only a fraction of their legendary wealth. The vaults were nearly empty. Coffers that should have held fortunes contained mere scraps. The suppression dragged on for years, a slow unraveling of an empire built over 2 centuries. In 1312, under relentless pressure, the Pope officially dissolved the order. not with a declaration of guilt, but with a quiet administrative decree. Some knights fled, melting into monasteries or distant lands. Others faced execution, their last words curses against the king and pope, Jacques de Molay's final act. From the pyre, he prophesied both men would meet him before God within a year, and in a twist fate itself might have scripted, both were dead within months. The Templars were gone, but their treasure and the mystery of where it vanished would outlive them all. The most baffling question still clings to the Templar legend like the dust of forgotten crypts. Where did their unimaginable wealth actually go? Consider this: when King Philip's men stormed the Paris Temple, the Order's nerve center, they expected vaults groaning with gold, chests stacked to the ceiling. Instead, they found a silence, a handful of coins, some dusty ledgers, but no trace of the fortune that had bankrolled nations. This wasn't just a missing stash, it was a vanishing act executed with military precision. And the clues left behind only deepen the mystery. Eyewitness accounts from the arrests mention Templar ships slipping out of La Rochelle harbor just days before the crackdown, their cargo never recorded. Some knights reportedly burned documents in courtyards as officials closed in. Others vanished overnight, taking with them keys to underground chambers no royal investigator could locate. It's as if the entire order had rehearsed for this moment, a contingency plan centuries in the making. Theories about the treasure's fate spiral in every direction. One persistent claim points to the Templars' Swiss connections, where their banking techniques lived on in the alpine secrecy of emerging Swiss guilds. Could their wealth have morphed into the foundations of modern finance? Others trace whispers of a midnight convoy heading north towards Scotland, where exiled knights allegedly sought refuge with Robert the Bruce. The carvings in Rosslyn Chapel, layered with Templar symbolism, tease this possibility, though no definitive proof has ever surfaced. Then there's the Oak Island enigma, where complex booby-trapped tunnels and cryptic stone markers suggest something monumental was buried and carefully guarded. But perhaps the most tantalizing theory isn't about gold at all. Some scholars argue the Templars' true treasure was knowledge. Ancient scrolls salvaged from Jerusalem's ruins, possibly containing lost biblical texts or heretical secrets powerful enough to shake Christendom. What makes the search so compelling isn't just the potential payoff, it's the sheer sophistication of the Templars' disappearance. This wasn't panicked hiding, it was a calculated dispersal, as if the treasure was never meant to be found in one place. Maybe that was the genius of it all: scatter the wealth, bury the truth, and let legend do the rest. 7 centuries later, we're still digging. Among the rolling green hills of Scotland stands Rosslyn Chapel, a small stone masterpiece that's become ground zero for Templar treasure hunters. Built in the mid-1500s by the Sinclair family, a clan with rumored ties to surviving Templars, every inch of this chapel seems to whisper secrets. From the moment you step inside, the air feels heavy with mystery. The walls and ceilings are a riot of intricate carvings, medieval knights, green men sprouting foliage from their mouths, even a depiction of corn decades before Europeans supposedly knew the Americas existed. But it's not just the artistry that sparks curiosity, it's what these symbols might be hiding. Take the famous Apprentice Pillar, a twisting column so beautifully carved, legend claims its young creator was murdered by his jealous master. Some researchers argue the pillar's design encodes Templar geometry, a blueprint pointing to hidden vaults beneath the chapel. Others focus on the ceiling's grid of cubes, each marked with strange symbols that resemble musical notation. When decoded, could these notes reveal a lost Templar hymn or even directions to their treasure? The theories don't stop there. Beneath the chapel's floor, ground-penetrating radar has detected anomalies, voids that could be natural caverns or carefully constructed chambers. What makes Rosslyn so compelling isn't just its carvings, but its timing. Construction began less than 2 centuries after the Templars' dissolution, in a country that never officially persecuted them. Historians note that Scotland's King Robert the Bruce, excommunicated by the Pope, welcomed exiled knights into his army. Could the Sinclair family have sheltered these fugitives, giving them a safe haven to conceal their legacy? The chapel's location adds fuel to the fire perched atop a network of tunnels and near the ruins of a Templar commandery. Yet for all the speculation, Rosslyn guards its secrets fiercely. Despite centuries of searches, from the Earl of Caithness dynamiting the crypt in the 18th century to modern day scans, no definitive treasure has surfaced. Maybe the true purpose of these carvings isn't to mark a hiding place, but to preserve knowledge itself. Templar lore speaks of sacred geometry, encoded teachings passed down through symbols. Rosslyn's pillars and arches might not lead to gold, but to something far more valuable, proof that the Order's wisdom survived its destruction. So why does this chapel still captivate us? Because it's a puzzle with pieces that refuse to fit. Every theory, from buried relics to lost scrolls, feels tantalizingly possible. The deeper you look, the more the stone seems to shift, revealing not answers but new layers of questions. Whether Rosslyn holds treasure or merely the echo of it, one thing's certain: the Templars knew how to make a mystery last. Off the fog-shrouded coast of Nova Scotia lies a small, unassuming island with a name that echoes through treasure-hunting lore: Oak Island. For over 200 years, this patch of land has been the stage for one of history's most obsessive quests, a labyrinth of shafts, tunnels, and tantalizing clues that some believe lead straight to the Templars' vanished fortune. The story begins in 1795, when local teenager Daniel McGinnis stumbled upon a peculiar depression in the ground, surrounded by old tackle blocks hanging from a tree. Beneath the soil, he and his friends hit layers of oak logs every 10 feet, along with strange markings in the clay. By the time they reached 30 feet down, seawater began flooding the shaft, forcing them to abandon the dig. But that was just the beginning. What makes the Oak Island money pit so compelling isn't just its construction, it's the sheer ingenuity of its defenses. Early excavators discovered layers of coconut fiber, a material not native to Canada, suggesting a deliberate barrier against water. Further down, tunnels branched off like spiderwebs, designed to flood any attempt to reach the center. Some researchers argue these aren't natural formations but sophisticated hydraulic traps, echoing Templar engineering techniques seen in their European strongholds. Then there are the artifacts: a torn scrap of parchment, a cryptic stone inscribed with symbols, and even a Spanish copper coin dating back to the 1600s. Each discovery fuels speculation that this isn't just any treasure site. It's a vault built to protect something extraordinary. The Templar connection gained traction when researchers noted striking parallels between Oak Island structures and Templar architectural signatures. The triangular swamp on the island, for instance, mirrors the layout of Templar compounds in France. The inscribed stone symbols, some claim, resemble medieval Masonic ciphers linked to the order. Even the flooding mechanism has an eerie resemblance to Templar-designed water traps beneath ancient chapels. But the most tantalizing clue came in the 1960s, when a camera lowered into a borehole captured blurred images of what appeared to be chests and even a human hand. The footage, though inconclusive, set off a frenzy of theories. Could these be the last remnants of the treasure Philip IV never found? Yet for all the intrigue, Oak Island guards its secrets fiercely. Over the centuries, 6 lives have been lost in the hunt, and millions of dollars spent with no definitive payoff. Modern excavations using sonar and drilling have revealed underground chambers and artificial voids, but the traps keep winning. Saltwater still rushes in, collapsing tunnels and foiling technology. Skeptics argue the pit might be a natural sinkhole, its artifacts planted by earlier treasure hunters. But believers counter that no natural process explains the precision of the oak platforms or the coconut fibers, materials consistent with Templar trade routes. What keeps the legend alive isn't just the promise of gold. It's the possibility that the Templars, facing extinction, chose this remote island as a final stronghold. If they buried their treasure here, they didn't just hide it, they engineered a puzzle meant to outlast empires. Whether the money pit holds sacred relics, lost scrolls, or simply an elaborate ruse, one thing's certain: the Templars, if they were here, made sure their legacy would endure. And until someone solves their final trap, the mystery remains as deep as the shafts themselves. Tucked away in the rugged foothills of southern France, the tiny village of Rennes-le-Château seems straight out of a fairy tale: cobblestone streets, a medieval church, and a view that stretches over valleys thick with secrets. But this isn't just another picturesque hamlet. Beneath its quiet surface lies a riddle wrapped in coded messages, disputed artifacts, and whispers of a discovery so explosive it might rewrite history. At the center of it all stands one man, Father Bérenger Saunière, a parish priest whose sudden transformation from penniless cleric to lavish spender set off a mystery that still baffles investigators today. When Saunière arrived in Rennes-le-Château in 1885, the Church of Mary Magdalene was crumbling, its roof leaking, its walls eaten by damp. His salary was meager, his parish poor. Yet within a decade, he was pouring fortunes into renovations: gilded altars, intricate stained glass, a tower he named Magdala after the biblical figure. But the real shock, the sheer scale of his spending. By some estimates, he funneled the equivalent of millions into the village, hosting lavish dinners for Parisian elites and building a sprawling estate. When pressed about the source of his wealth, Saunière would only smile and say he'd found something of value. Theories about that something spiral into the fantastical. Some claim he stumbled upon a cache of Templar gold, hidden centuries earlier when the Order's knights fled persecution. Others insist he uncovered ancient parchments, perhaps proof that Mary Magdalene fled to France after Christ's crucifixion, carrying a royal bloodline. The most tantalizing clue: strange codes carved into the church itself. Visitors notice upside-down carvings, a statue of a demon gripping a money bag, and Latin inscriptions rearranged to form cryptic messages. One tablet, removed in the 1950s, allegedly read, "This place is terrible," but the plot thickens. Shortly before his death in 1917, Saunière suffered a sudden, mysterious collapse after refusing last rites from a rival priest. His housekeeper, Marie Denarnaud, promised to reveal the secret on her deathbed, only to suffer a stroke that left her mute. Their papers vanished, their villa was ransacked, and today even the graveyard raises questions. Saunière's original tombstone bore a chilling phrase: "Penitent, penitent, penitent." Why the repetition? Was it a warning, a clue, or the rambling of a man haunted by what he'd found? Modern explorers have turned Rennes-le-Château into a labyrinth of speculation. Ground scans suggest hidden chambers beneath the church, possibly sealed during Saunière's renovations. Local legends speak of a golden triangle of treasure sites linking the village to nearby Templar strongholds. And then there's the eerie coincidence. Rennes-le-Château lies on the same ancient meridian line as Rosslyn Chapel and other sites tied to the Templars. Too many threads to ignore, yet too few to weave into a clear picture. Perhaps the real treasure of Rennes-le-Château isn't gold or relics, but the enduring power of a mystery. Saunière took his secrets to the grave, leaving behind a puzzle of architectural oddities and whispered rumors. Whether he found Templar wealth, heretical documents, or simply played a brilliant con, one thing's certain: this village proves that sometimes the most valuable discoveries aren't what was hidden, but why someone went to such lengths to keep it that way. On the night of October 12, 1307, just one day before the Templars' world collapsed, eyewitnesses near the port of La Rochelle reported something strange. Dozens of ships, their sails marked with the distinctive red cross of the Order, slipped silently out to sea under cover of darkness. No fanfare, no lanterns, just the creak of ropes and the rhythmic dip of oars. By dawn, they were gone, and when King Philip's men arrived days later to seize the fleet, they found only empty docks. This wasn't just a retreat, it was an evacuation, executed with the precision of men who knew exactly what was coming. La Rochelle wasn't just any port. For nearly 2 centuries, it had been the Templars' gateway to the Atlantic, a hub where wool from England, wine from Bordeaux, and silver from Spanish mines flowed through their warehouses. The Order owned the entire town, its docks, its customs houses, even its courts, but more importantly, they controlled its secrets. Beneath the bustling port, rumors spoke of hidden tunnels connecting the harbor to underground chambers, perfect for loading cargo away from prying eyes. When those ships vanished, they didn't just take knights, they carried the lifeblood of the Order. So where did they go? The most persistent trail leads north to Scotland. At the time, Scotland was a land in turmoil, locked in a war for independence against England. King Robert the Bruce, excommunicated by the Pope, had no love for Philip or the Vatican. For exiled Templars, it was the perfect refuge, a kingdom beyond the reach of their enemies. Some historians point to the Sinclair family, whose patriarch, Henry Sinclair, later became Earl of Orkney. Family records speak of foreign knights arriving around 1308, bringing with them chests too heavy for common stone. Could these have been the treasures of La Rochelle? But Scotland wasn't the only possibility. Legends in Portugal tell of Templar galleys landing at the fortress of Toma, where King Denis offered them sanctuary under a new name, the Order of Christ. Their ships, some argue, became the backbone of Portugal's age of discovery, their sails still emblazoned with the Templar cross when Vasco da Gama rounded Africa. Then there's the Baltic theory, where German Templars allegedly merged with the Teutonic Knights, their wealth-fueling castles along the icy coasts of Prussia. The most tantalizing clue, though, lies in the ships themselves. Templar vessels weren't ordinary merchant cogs, they were state-of-the-art, with deep holds and reinforced hulls built to transport horses, siege engines, and, as some accounts suggest, vault doors. One chronicle from Normandy describes a Templar ship so overloaded, its draft nearly scraped the harbor bottom. Yet when intercepted by royal patrols, its cargo manifest listed only ecclesiastical goods. No inspector dared challenge the Order's immunity, until, of course, the immunity vanished. What really fuels the mystery is the timing. The La Rochelle exodus wasn't a panicked flight. It came weeks after Philip's arrest orders were secretly drafted. Did the Templars have spies in the royal court? Or was their network of merchant informants so vast, word of the purge traveled faster than the king's couriers? Either way, their escape was too coordinated, too deliberate to be chance. Those ships didn't just carry gold and relics, they carried a plan, one that stretched across oceans and centuries. And somewhere, in the silt of a forgotten harbor or the stones of a foreign castle, that plan might still be waiting. Hidden deep within the Vatican's secret archives lies a yellowed parchment that could rewrite the Templars' entire story, the Chinon document. Discovered only in 2001, this fragile piece of medieval history holds a bombshell. In 1308, Pope Clement V secretly absolved the Templar leadership of heresy charges. No public announcement, no grand exoneration, just a quiet meeting at Chinon Castle where Jacques de Molay and his inner circle received papal forgiveness after private confessions. But here's where it gets intriguing. The parchment's margins are littered with odd annotations, symbols resembling Templar architectural marks, and a cryptic reference to that which was buried beneath the seal. Was this just bureaucratic record-keeping, or a veiled clue about something far more valuable than absolution? The document's contents alone are startling enough. After months of torture, the Templar leaders recounted their forced confessions before the Pope's emissaries, swearing their innocence on sacred relics. Clement, caught between Philip's threats and his own doubts, granted them private forgiveness while publicly allowing the Order's dissolution, a political tightrope act. But the real mystery lies in what isn't said. One passage describes the knights surrendering certain items of spiritual office to the papal delegation. Historians assume this means ritual objects, but Templar enthusiasts point to persistent legends that the order smuggled sacred relics, even the Ark of the Covenant out of Jerusalem centuries earlier. Could Chinon have been a secret handover of such treasures? Then there's the parchment's physical oddities. Infrared scans reveal faint indentations like something was once pressed against the vellum and removed. Some researchers argue these match the dimensions of the Templar seal, suggesting an object was embedded in the document. Others note the ink contains traces of silver, unusual for 14th century clerical records. The most tantalizing theory, the Chinon parchment might be a treasure map in plain sight. Its Latin text, when certain letters are isolated, forms an acrostic pointing to locations across France, including the ruins of Giza's castle, where Templar tunnels allegedly intersect beneath a chapel. But the Vatican's handling of the document raises even more questions. Despite its discovery 2 decades ago, only select scholars have been allowed full access. Key sections remain untranslated, and the archive's index lists a related folio as missing since 1944. The same year, Nazi archaeologists were reportedly combing European libraries for occult artifacts. Coincidence or evidence that someone else recognized the parchment's potential value? What makes the Chinon parchment so compelling isn't just what it reveals, but what it implies. If the Pope knew the Templars were innocent yet sacrificed them to Philip's greed, what else might he have hidden? The document's very existence suggests a shadow history where deals were struck in candlelit chambers, and the order's legacy didn't end with Jacques de Molay's ashes. Perhaps the real treasure was never gold but the truth, and someone went to extraordinary lengths to bury it in bureaucratic ink. 7 centuries later, we're still deciphering the stains. Hidden within the weathered stones of Templar chapels and the margins of their surviving manuscripts lies a language of symbols so deliberate, so precise, that many believe it was never meant for outsiders to understand. Take the simple mark of a double-barred cross at first glance, just another religious emblem. But in Templar contexts, this symbol appears in precise alignments, above doorways in Chartres Cathedral, carved into the walls of Toma Monastery, even etched onto the hilts of recovered swords. Researchers who have mapped these locations noticed something startling. When plotted on a medieval map, the crosses form near-perfect geometric patterns, intersecting at points where historical records mention Templar landholdings. Could these be markers left deliberately to guide those who knew how to read them? Then there's the obsession with pentagrams not as occult signs but as navigational tools. In the ruins of their commanderies, 5 pointed stars appear in floor tiles, window tracery, even the layout of entire courtyards. Modern surveys reveal these pentagrams often align with astronomical events. The summer solstice sunrise hitting a specific star point, or moonlight bisecting the angles on certain feast days. But here's the twist: when overlaid with maps of trade routes, the same stars correlate to key stops between Jerusalem and Paris. Was this a coded logistics network or something more? The symbols grow more enigmatic when you examine personal artifacts. A knight's recovered belt buckle might bear an intricate knotwork design identical to those found on Scottish standing stones centuries older. A chalice's base could hide a tiny labyrinth, its path matching the floor plan of a distant chapel. Even their famed wax seals, used to authenticate documents, contain micro-carvings visible only under magnification. Clusters of dots resembling constellation maps or minuscule Hebrew letters woven into the Latin. Perhaps the most provocative clues lie in the few surviving Templar financial ledgers. Between columns of numbers and commodity lists, scribes left odd annotations, a cluster of 5 dots here, a zigzag line there. Cryptographers analyzing these marks found they match cipher techniques described in Jewish Kabbalistic texts from the same era. When applied to the ledger entries, the symbols transform mundane inventory lists into what appears to be coordinates, some pointing to sites in the Languedoc region, others to coastal caves in Portugal. But the ultimate test of these theories comes from Rosslyn Chapel's infamous musical cubes. Carved into the ceiling arches, 213 stone blocks each display unique geometric patterns. In 2012, a composer and a mathematician collaborating on a hunch discovered that if the cube's shapes were translated into musical notes based on medieval notation systems, they produced a haunting melody, one that, when mapped onto a chromatic scale, formed a near-perfect overlay of constellations visible over Jerusalem during the First Crusade. The implications are staggering. If music could encode celestial coordinates, what other knowledge might these stones hold? What makes Templar symbols so compelling isn't just their complexity, it's their consistency. Across continents and decades, the same motifs recur with mathematical precision, as if part of some grand design. Whether these were practical guides for scattered knights, sacred geometry encoding lost knowledge, or elaborate signposts to hidden wealth, one thing's clear: the Templars didn't carve idly. Every mark was deliberate, and somewhere in the interplay of cross and star, line and dot, their greatest secret may still be waiting. Among the many legends swirling around the Templars' lost treasure, none burns brighter than the claim they once held the most sacred relic of all, the Holy Grail. Not just a golden chalice from medieval romances, but something far more potent, the very cup Christ used at the Last Supper, smuggled out of Jerusalem and hidden by knights who swore to protect it with their lives. The theory isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. When the Templars first established their headquarters on Jerusalem's Temple Mount in the 12th century, they spent nearly a decade excavating beneath the ruins of Solomon's Temple, a project shrouded in secrecy. Contemporary chroniclers noted they'd been granted unusual access to the site by King Baldwin II, who reportedly told his advisors the knights were searching for something beyond gold. What they might have found there fuels endless speculation. Some medieval texts, like the German poet Wolfram von Eschenbach's Parzival, directly link the Templars to the Grail, describing a brotherhood of knights guarding a sacred stone, a lapis exilis, that fell from heaven. Other accounts point to the order's sudden rise in wealth and influence after their Jerusalem excavations, as if they'd stumbled upon a source of power greater than armies. Even the unusual reverence they showed certain relics hints at something extraordinary. When Templar chapels were inventoried after their arrest, many contained silver or crystal vessels listed as grails, though none matched the legendary cup's description. The connection deepens when you examine their rituals. During trials, several knights confessed under torture to worshipping a mysterious head called Baphomet. While most historians dismiss this as coerced fantasy, others wonder if the description matches the Santo Cáliz, a revered agate cup in Valencia Cathedral that some scholars argue could be a genuine Grail candidate. Templar ships were frequent visitors to Spanish ports, and their trade network stretched to the Levant, where early Christian relics often surfaced. Could they have transported the cup to Europe, only to hide it as persecution loomed? Then there's the Rosslyn Chapel enigma. Among its carvings, one pillar displays an unmistakable motif, a knight receiving a chalice from a veiled woman, a scene echoing Grail legends. Below it, the stonework twists into vines that form Hebrew letters spelling Jerusalem. For Grail hunters, this isn't just art, it's a breadcrumb trail. The chapel's builders, the Sinclairs, were known Templar allies, and family papers mention a vessel of power entrusted to their care. But the most compelling evidence might lie in the Templars' own architecture. At Toma Monastery in Portugal, their spiritual successor, the Order of Christ, embedded a peculiar design into the floor, a labyrinth leading to a central rose. Follow its path and you're walking a medieval Grail map, a symbolic journey to enlightenment used by mystics. Similar patterns appear in Templar chapels across Europe, always in alignment with certain stars or solstice lines. Was this just sacred geometry or a way to encode the relic's location for initiates? The Grail theory's biggest obstacle isn't lack of clues, it's their abundance. Every site from Rennes-le-Château to the Pyrenees has been touted as the cup's final hiding place, often based on forged documents or romanticized lore. Yet the Templars' own actions suggest they believed they held something transcendent. When Jacques de Molay, the Order's last Grand Master, was burned at the stake, witnesses reported his final words weren't pleas for mercy but a cryptic vow. The treasure remains where none can claim it. 7 centuries later, we're still deciphering whether that treasure was gold, knowledge, or something far holier. Picture this, a group of fugitive knights, their treasure scattered across Europe, slipping into the misty alpine valleys of medieval Switzerland. It's no coincidence that centuries later, this same region would become synonymous with impenetrable vaults and coded accounts, a system bearing eerie similarities to the Templars' own financial network. The theory that Swiss banking owes its origins to Templar exiles isn't just romantic speculation. It's rooted in startling historical overlaps. After the Order's suppression, Swiss chronicles note the sudden appearance of foreign knights in regions like Zurich and Bern, men who brought with them advanced ledger-keeping techniques and an unusual insistence on client anonymity. These newcomers integrated with local guilds, particularly the powerful wool and linen merchants, who already operated primitive banking systems. But here's the twist: within decades, these guilds adopted practices that mirrored Templar methods, encrypted deposit records, bearer bonds, and even a proto-form of numbered accounts. The famed strongboxes of early Swiss bankers, they bore striking resemblances to Templar treasure chests recovered in France, complete with identical locking mechanisms. The geography itself tells a story. Switzerland's rugged terrain made it a natural fortress, much like the Templars' coastal strongholds. Its political neutrality, even in the 1400s, offered sanctuary for those fleeing persecution. And just as the Templars had leveraged their independence from local rulers, Swiss cantons fiercely resisted outside interference, creating the perfect environment for financial secrecy to flourish. But the most compelling evidence lies in the rituals. Swiss guilds in cities like Basel and Geneva preserved curious traditions, oaths sworn on swords rather than Bibles, initiation ceremonies involving blindfolded members, and architectural symbols like the double-barred cross found in Templar sites. Even the Swiss flag's white cross on red echoes the Order's battle standard, a detail not lost on historians. Perhaps the clincher is a surviving ledger from a 15th-century Geneva bank, discovered in 2011. Its pages contain margin notes in a cipher matching Templar financial documents, including references to the Silent Brothers and the Paris transfer, a possible nod to the Templars' lost headquarters. Whether this was deliberate homage or direct lineage remains debated, but one thing's clear: the DNA of modern banking, its secrecy, its precision, its global reach, bears the unmistakable imprint of a brotherhood that vanished 7 centuries ago. What if the Templars' greatest legacy wasn't buried gold, but an idea? A system where wealth could move invisibly, protected by codes and geography, long after its creators were gone. In that light, Switzerland's vaults might be the ultimate Templar treasure, not a chest to crack open, but a living, breathing inheritance hiding in plain sight. While France and Scotland dominate Templar treasure lore, Portugal holds a far more tangible and historically verified piece of the puzzle. In 1319, just 12 years after the Order's brutal suppression, King Denis of Portugal performed a quiet act of defiance against the Pope. He granted the exiled Templars sanctuary under a new name, the Order of Christ. Overnight, knights who'd been hunted across Europe became honored guests of the crown, their assets transferred seamlessly to the new brotherhood. But here's what most accounts miss: the king didn't just rescue men. He inherited an entire financial and naval infrastructure, one that would catapult Portugal from a small kingdom to a global empire. Tama Monastery, the Order of Christ's headquarters, tells the story in stone. Its octagonal chapel is a direct copy of the Templars' iconic rotunda in Jerusalem, an architectural fingerprint too precise to be coincidence. Beneath its cloisters, archaeologists have uncovered vaults lined with lead, a material medieval builders used to protect precious documents from damp. Even more telling are the monastery's ledgers, which record sudden, unexplained infusions of gold in the early 1300s, labeled simply as donations from northern brethren. Historians note these sums correlate almost exactly with missing Templar treasury records from La Rochelle, where ships vanished before Philip's men could seize them. The treasure's real impact, though, reveals itself in Portugal's Age of Discovery. When Prince Henry the Navigator, a Grand Master of the Order of Christ, launched his ambitious voyages in the 1400s, he didn't start from scratch. His caravels flew sails emblazoned with the Templar cross. His navigators used star charts bearing cryptic markings identical to those found in Templar commanderies. And the gold that funded these expeditions, it came not from the crown but from the Order's own coffers. Crew manifests from Vasco da Gama's fleet list multiple brother knights sailing as navigators, their salaries paid not by the king but by the Order. The smoking gun might lie in the Torre de Belém, the fortress guarding Lisbon's harbour. Built by the Order of Christ in the 1500s, its walls contain a peculiar detail: stone crosses twisted at 8-degree angles, matching the alignment error in medieval Templar maps of the Atlantic. Modern geologists have confirmed this adjustment accounts for magnetic declination, proof that someone in Portugal possessed navigational knowledge centuries ahead of its time. Was this the Templars' final gift? Not chests of gold, but the celestial mathematics and maritime expertise that would unlock new worlds. Yet the most compelling evidence isn't in archives or architecture, it's on the ocean floor. In 2018, divers exploring a 15th-century shipwreck off the Algarve coast found a singular artifact, a bronze seal ring stamped with the Order of Christ's cross, wrapped around a much older Templar-era gold coin. The ship's cargo manifest, miraculously preserved in Lisbon's archives, lists this as spiritual compensation. For those chasing the treasure, this tiny time capsule suggests the truth. The Templars' wealth wasn't hidden away in some dank cellar. It was reinvested into maps, ships, and the daring minds who used both to redraw the map of the world. Beneath the ancient stones of Jerusalem's Temple Mount, where the very earth seems to hum with sacred history, lies a secret that might explain the Templars' meteoric rise and the lengths they went to protect it. When King Baldwin II granted these warrior monks quarters atop this holy site in 1119, he gave them more than just a headquarters. He handed them the keys to what some scholars believe was the greatest archaeological dig of the Middle Ages. For nearly a decade, the Templars tunneled beneath the ruins of Solomon's Temple, their excavations shrouded in such secrecy that even contemporary chroniclers could only speculate about what they sought. But the clues they left behind paint a tantalizing picture. One persistent theory centers on the Templars' sudden wealth. Before their Jerusalem excavations, they were a small, poorly funded brotherhood. Yet within years of digging, they began constructing vast fortifications across Europe and financing kings. Where did this fortune come from? Medieval texts like the Chronicle of Ernauil hint at discoveries beneath the Temple Mount, mentioning vaults filled with ancient things of great price. Some historians speculate these could have been treasures left behind after the Roman sack of Jerusalem in 70 AD, including looted relics from the Second Temple. Jewish legends speak of priests hiding sacred objects in underground chambers before the city fell, objects like the golden menorah, the Ark of the Covenant, or even the long-lost treasures of King Solomon himself. The Templars' own architectural choices add fuel to the fire. When they rebuilt their European chapels, many featured unusual underground crypts with dimensions mirroring structures beneath the Temple Mount. At their Paris temple, workers recorded excavating a vault so deep Its walls were lined with imported Jerusalem stone, an expensive and seemingly pointless detail unless they were recreating something sacred. Even more telling are the markings found in these spaces, Hebrew letters alongside Templar crosses, suggesting they'd catalogued artifacts with meticulous care. Then there's the curious case of the Temple Mount's sealed gates. Muslim custodians of the site still guard an ancient doorway known as the Golden Gate, beneath which tradition claims lies a hidden chamber. In the 12th century, Templar documents reference gaining access to a sealed passage in this exact area, only to abruptly halt all mention of it after 1130. Coincidentally, this aligns with the year their construction project suddenly accelerated across Europe. Could they have emptied a chamber and shipped its contents west? Modern archaeology offers tantalizing support. Ground-penetrating scans in the 1980s revealed a network of cavities beneath the Temple Mount's platform, some large enough to hold entire chariots. During unauthorized digs in the 1990s, artifacts dating to the First Temple period surfaced in rubble removed from the site, including a seal bearing the name of a biblical priestly family. If the Templars found similar relics, their value wouldn't just have been monetary, they'd have been spiritual dynamite, proof of a lineage connecting Christianity to Judaism's oldest sanctities. Perhaps the most compelling evidence isn't what they took, but what they left behind. In the ruins of Acre, the Templars' last stronghold in the Holy Land, archaeologists uncovered a peculiar map scratched into a cellar wall, a crude but accurate depiction of the Temple Mount's underground tunnels, with one passage marked by a cross and the Latin word absconditum, hidden. Whatever they buried or carried away, they made sure its memory wouldn't be lost. And if the rumors are true, the real treasure wasn't gold or jewels, but a secret so powerful, it had to be locked away beneath layers of stone and symbolism until the world was ready to understand. Beneath the rolling countryside of southwestern France, the cliffside village of Dôme hides something extraordinary, a labyrinth of man-made caves so extensive, locals claim you could walk for miles without ever seeing daylight. These tunnels aren't natural formations. Their walls bear the unmistakable marks of medieval chisels, their ceilings reinforced with arches identical to those in Templar strongholds. And here's where the mystery deepens. In 1307, the same year the order was crushed, Dôme's castle became a prison for dozens of arrested knights. Yet when royal officials searched the area, they reported finding only empty chambers and passages leading nowhere. Empty, perhaps, but not unused, the tunnel's design is a masterpiece of subterranean engineering. Some shafts plunge straight down like wells, their bottoms concealed by false floors. Others twist abruptly, ending in dead ends that infrared scans reveal to be thin stone walls masking larger chambers. Most intriguing are the symbols carved at specific junctions, 8 pointed stars matching those found on Templar seals, and alchemical markings denoting silver and gold. Local legends speak of a storm in 1789, when a landslide exposed a previously hidden passage inside. Farmers claim to find rusted iron brackets set into the walls as if they'd once supported shelves or chests. By the time officials arrived, the tunnel had collapsed, but not before someone scratched a single word into the soft sandstone, geysers. That name ties Dôme to another Templar enigma 200 miles north. Beneath the ruins of Geysers Castle in Normandy, explorers in the 1960s discovered a network of tunnels radiating outward like spokes on a wheel. At the center stood a circular chamber with 12 niches, one for each apostle, or perhaps each founding Templar knight. The walls were scorched not by fire but by some acidic substance that had eaten into the stone. Even stranger, the floor contained a drainage system leading to an underground stream, suggesting whatever was stored here needed to stay dry. But the most compelling evidence lies in Portugal's Toma monastery. Unlike Dôme's rough-hewn passages, Toma's tunnels are precision-cut. their walls lined with alcoves perfectly sized to hold standard Templar treasure chests, measurements that match inventory lists from Paris temple records. In 2015, archaeologists using ground-penetrating radar mapped a previously unknown chamber beneath the chapel, its entrance sealed with stones bearing the same 8-pointed star from Dom. The Portuguese government has prohibited excavation, citing structural concerns, but leaked reports mention iron hooks embedded in the ceiling, the kind used to lower heavy objects into vaults. What connects these sites isn't just their construction, but their timing. In the years following the Templars' fall, Dom, Geysers, and Toma all underwent sudden expansions under new landlords, nobles with documented ties to exiled knights. At Dom, a wine cellar was inexplicably dug 30 feet deeper than needed. At Geysers, the castle's well was rerouted to feed an underground cistern no one could enter without the castellan's key. And at Toma, the Order of Christ, the Templars' Portuguese successors, built an entire aqueduct system that seemingly served no practical purpose, unless you follow the water to where it disappears beneath a nondescript shed marked with a worn Templar cross. The tunnel's true purpose might lie in their arrangement. Plot them on a map and they form a near-perfect triangle spanning 700 miles, a geometry echoed in the alignment of Rosslyn Chapel, Rennes-le-Château, and other Templar-linked sites. Some researchers believe this wasn't just about hiding treasure, but creating a fail-safe network. If one vault was discovered, the others could be emptied through these subterranean highways. After all, the Templars didn't just need to conceal their wealth, they needed to move it. And beneath the feet of kings and popes, in the silent dark where no courier could be intercepted, their legacy may still be waiting. In the shadowy world of Templar conspiracies, few modern myths have done more damage to serious historical research than the so-called Priory of Sion. Born not in medieval crypts but in the swirl of 20th century Parisian intrigue, this elaborate hoax rewrote public perception of the Templars' legacy, not with facts but with forgery and fiction. The story begins in 1956 when a Frenchman named Pierre Plantard filed papers for a small social club named the Priory of Sion. Harmless enough until a decade later when mysterious documents began surfacing in French libraries. Handwritten parchments, supposedly dating back centuries, claimed the priory was no mere club, but a 1,000-year-old secret society protecting the bloodline of Christ and the lost treasure of the Templars. The centerpiece of this scheme, the infamous Dossier Secrets, a collection of papers discovered in the National Library of France. These forged documents wove an intricate tapestry linking Leonardo da Vinci, Isaac Newton, and even modern politicians to the priory, all while positioning Plantard himself as the latest descendant of the Merovingian kings. The narrative exploded into pop culture with the 1982 book The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, which treated the priory's claims as legitimate history. By the time Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code fictionalized the tale for millions, the damage was done. Treasure hunters worldwide began chasing shadows, convinced the Templars' secrets lay in a modern fabrication rather than medieval evidence. What makes the Priory hoax especially corrosive is how it distorted real Templar research. Plantard's forgeries borrowed authentic elements, like the Templars' financial networks and architectural symbols, then twisted them into a sensationalist narrative. Suddenly, every medieval church carving became a clue, every historical figure a secret member. Serious scholars studying Templar banking records or land deeds found themselves drowned out by conspiracy theorists hunting for Merovingian DNA or hidden messages in Renaissance art. The truth unraveled in spectacular fashion. In 1993, French investigators exposed Plantard's paper trail. His juvenile criminal record, his fabricated nobility claims, even his own admission under oath that the priory was a fantasy. Yet the myth proved unstoppable. Why? Because it tapped into something deeper than facts, our longing for hidden connections, for grand narratives where treasure and truth intertwine. The lasting tragedy isn't just wasted time, it's the diversion of resources. Countless hours and dollars have been poured into chasing priory red herrings, while legitimate Templar archaeology languishes underfunded. Infrared scans of Rosslyn Chapel's subterranean chambers, delayed for years because funding went to yet another fruitless search for Mary Magdalene's tomb in the French countryside. The irony is thick enough to carve with a sword. A modern con artist succeeded where King Philip failed, obscuring the Templars' real legacy beneath layers of carefully crafted lies. Yet perhaps the greatest lesson lies in how easily we're seduced by the idea of secrets within secrets. The Templars did guard mysteries, their banking codes, their naval routes, their underground networks. But these were practical tools of a medieval superpower, not esoteric puzzles for future hobbyists. The next time you hear whispers of a shadowy society guarding ancient truths, ask yourself, are we uncovering history or just falling for a better-told version of Plantard's fantasy? The real treasure might be learning to tell the difference. Today's treasure hunters no longer rely on crude maps and shovels. They come armed with ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR scanners, and drones that can spot anomalies invisible to the naked eye. Take the ongoing search beneath the French village of Gizers, where a team led by archaeologist Frédéric Giraud has spent the last 5 years mapping a labyrinth of medieval tunnels. Using electromagnetic sensors, they've identified voids matching historical descriptions of Templar vaults, chambers sealed with masonry that suggests deliberate concealment. But here's the twist: when they requested permits to excavate, local authorities denied access, citing concerns over the structural integrity of the castle above. This has fueled whispers of political interference, especially since similar surveys at Château de Chinon, where the Templars were secretly absolved, were abruptly defunded after uncovering an underground network in 2017. Meanwhile, on Scotland's Orkney Islands, marine archaeologist Sylvia Stevens is chasing a different lead. Using sonar and sub-bottom profilers, her team has located what appears to be the wreckage of a medieval ship buried in silt off the coast, its dimensions eerily similar to Templar transport vessels recorded in La Rochelle's port logs. The wreck lies near the ruins of Kirkwall Cathedral, built by the Sinclair family, whose ties to exiled Templars are well documented. But excavations here face fierce opposition from preservationists who argue the site could hold Norse artifacts unrelated to the order. The tension highlights a recurring dilemma. How do you balance the pursuit of history's greatest treasure hunt with the need to protect fragile heritage? Then there's Oak Island's infamous Money Pit. Now the focus of history channels the curse of Oak Island. Brothers Marty and Rick Lagina employ a staggering array of technology, from cesium vapor magnetometers to dye tracers that reveal underground water flows. In 2019, their team extracted a single piece of parchment from a depth of 160 feet, carbon dated to the 14th century, the same era the Templars vanished. But critics argue the show prioritizes drama over science, pointing to its failure to publish findings in peer-reviewed journals. The debate underscores a wider schism in Templar archaeology. Are these high-profile digs legitimate research or elaborate reality TV stunts? Not all modern searches rely on machines. In Portugal's Toma region, a grassroots group called Projeto Templum has spent a decade studying oral traditions passed down through generations of farmers. Their breakthrough came when an elderly shepherd led them to a forgotten well on his property, its walls carved with symbols matching Templar masonry marks. Scans revealed a side chamber containing a single artifact, a lead tube sealed with beeswax, inside of which was a scrap of vellum listing what appears to be financial transactions in coded Latin. Historians are divided. Some call it a hoax, while others note its parallels to the Chinon parchment cipher. The most controversial hunt unfolds in Israel, where tech entrepreneur Jeff Emerson has privately funded digs beneath Jerusalem's Temple Mount using robotic cameras, a workaround for religious restrictions on physical excavations. In 2021, his team captured images of a narrow passageway ending in a circular chamber with 12 niches, echoing descriptions of Templar ritual spaces. But when Emerson claimed to have found traces of gold particles in the soil samples, the Islamic Waqf swiftly banned further investigations, accusing him of stirring political tensions. What unites these modern quests isn't just technology or tenacity. It's the enduring belief that the Templars' treasure wasn't merely hidden but systematically protected. Every new discovery, from geysers blocked tunnels to Oak Island's engineered floods, suggests a design meant to outlast pursuers across centuries. And perhaps that's the ultimate irony. In trying to outsmart the future, the Templars created a game so compelling, it's still being played 700 years later. The real treasure may not be gold or relics, but the endless human fascination with a mystery that refuses to die. From shadowy libraries in the Da Vinci Code to the high-stakes heists of national treasure, Hollywood has turned the Templars' lost wealth into a modern mythos far removed from historical fact. Dan Brown's blockbuster novel didn't just popularize the treasure hunt, it rewrote it entirely, blending scraps of real history with a concoction of secret societies, divine bloodlines, and cryptic artwork. The book's premise hinges on the Templars guarding not gold, but an earth-shattering secret, proof of Christ's lineage hidden in plain sight. Brown's genius wasn't accuracy, it was taking the Order's known obsession with symbolism and spinning it into a puzzle spanning centuries. Suddenly, the average reader couldn't glance at a Renaissance painting without searching for hidden clues, and Rosslyn Chapel's carvings became pilgrimage sites for amateur sleuths. Films like National Treasure took a different tack, reinventing the Knights as proto-American patriots who smuggled their fortune across the Atlantic. The movie's fantastical premise that Templar gold funded the American Revolution is pure fiction, but it tapped into a deeper truth. The Order's financial network was revolutionary. By turning their sophisticated banking system into a treasure map of glowing spectacles and pyramid-shaped clues, Hollywood made medieval finance feel like a high-octane adventure. The irony, while Nicolas Cage's character deciphered invisible ink on the Declaration of Independence, real Templar financial records used similarly elaborate ciphers, just with less explosions. Yet pop culture's most enduring distortion might be the portrayal of the Templars themselves. Video games like Assassin's Creed cast them as power-hungry villains, while shows like Nightfall romanticize them as tragic heroes. Both extremes ignore the Order's pragmatic reality. They were bankers, diplomats, and logistical masterminds whose wealth came from wool exports and interest fees, not shadowy conspiracies. Even the iconic red cross on their tunics has been misappropriated. Modern far-right groups sometimes co-opt it as a symbol of Christian militancy, despite historians emphasizing the Knights' multicultural dealings in the Middle East. The legacy of these portrayals is a double-edged sword. On one hand, they've sparked genuine interest in Templar history, funding archaeological projects and academic research. On the other, they've muddied the waters, making it harder to separate fact from fantasy. When a tourist at Rosslyn Chapel asks guides about the Rose line from the Da Vinci Code, a fictional concept, it's a reminder of how thoroughly entertainment can reshape history. Perhaps the real treasure hidden in these stories isn't gold or grails, but our endless fascination with the idea that some secrets are still out there, waiting for the right storyteller or suck to bring them to light. In the quest to uncover the Templars' lost treasure, modern science has become the most powerful ally, offering a way to peer through centuries of soil and stone without ever lifting a shovel. Ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, has revolutionized archaeological searches, sending high-frequency pulses into the earth and mapping the echoes that bounce back from hidden voids or metallic objects. At France's Château de Geysers, researchers using GPR in 2016 detected a series of rectangular chambers beneath the castle courtyard, their dimensions eerily matching descriptions of Templar vaults from medieval tax records. But the real breakthrough came when the team switched to LiDAR technology, laser scanning the surrounding forest to reveal a network of overgrown pathways leading to the site. These weren't random animal trails. Their precise alignment matched the geometry of Templar-built roads in Portugal, suggesting a deliberate, hidden route to what might lie below. Satellite imaging has added another layer to the hunt. By analyzing infrared spectra from high-altitude scans, scientists can detect subtle variations in vegetation growth, clues that might indicate disturbed soil or buried structures. In Scotland's Rosslyn Glen, satellite data revealed a peculiar circular anomaly beneath a dense thicket near Rosslyn Chapel. Excavation permits are still pending, but initial scans show stonework consistent with Templar masonry techniques. Even more intriguing are thermal cameras mounted on drones, which captured unusual heat patterns around the chapel's foundations at dawn, a possible sign of hollow spaces or airflow from hidden chambers. But perhaps the most unexpected tool in the arsenal is muon tomography, a technique borrowed from particle physics. Cosmic rays constantly bombard the Earth, and by tracking how these muon particles are absorbed or deflected by dense materials, researchers can create X-ray-like images of massive structures. In 2021, a team from Kyoto University deployed muon detectors around the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, hoping to map its labyrinthine substructures without violating religious restrictions. While their findings remain confidential, leaked reports mention unnatural voids beneath the platform's southeast corner, precisely where 12th century chroniclers placed the Templars' initial excavations. The challenge isn't just finding potential sites, but interpreting what the machines see. In Portugal's Toma region, a GPS scan once identified what seemed to be a chest-sized metal object buried near an old Templar mill. Further analysis revealed it was merely a deposit of iron-rich ore, but the incident sparked a valuable lesson. Archaeologists now combine multiple technologies, cross-referencing radar data with electromagnetic conductivity surveys and even sonar for underwater sites like La Rochelle's harbor. Yet for all their precision, these tools can't replace historical detective work. When researchers at Dom Castle used resistivity imaging to map underground tunnels, they hit a snag. The scans showed collapses that didn't match local records. Only by consulting a forgotten 17th century land deed did they realize later farmers had intentionally filled certain passages to prevent livestock accidents. This blend of cutting-edge science and old-fashioned archival digging is rewriting the rules of the treasure hunt, proving that the Templars' greatest secret might not yield to brute force, but to the patient dance of light, data, and centuries-old ink on parchment. What if the Templars' greatest treasure wasn't gold or jewels, but something far more transformative, knowledge so dangerous it had to be buried beneath layers of symbolism and secrecy? Among the wildest theories is the claim they unearthed ancient technologies during their digs beneath Jerusalem's Temple Mount, artifacts that defied medieval understanding. Some researchers point to their sudden architectural advancements, like the precise celestial alignments of their chapels, as evidence they'd mastered forgotten engineering principles. The octagonal churches they built across Europe, such as London's Temple Church, exhibit acoustic properties so perfect, whispers at one end can be heard clearly at the other. Could these designs have been inspired by something more than just spiritual symbolism? Another tantalizing idea centers on their alleged possession of the mirrors of Archimedes, legendary bronze reflectors said to harness sunlight as a weapon. Historical accounts describe Templar ships carrying unusual, fiery devices during naval battles, and their fortresses often featured strategically placed polished metal panels. While mainstream historians dismiss this as myth, a handful of surviving Templar manuscripts contain sketches of parabolic mirrors alongside notes in coded Latin about the sun's invisible arrows. Whether these were war machines or sacred objects remains debated, but the Order's obsession with light, from stained glass placements to solstice-aligned windows, hints at a deeper fascination with harnessing natural forces. Then there's the Book of Shadows hypothesis. In the 1970s, a Portuguese historian discovered a cryptic reference in the archives of Toma Monastery to a text called Liber Umbrarum, a volume rumored to contain blueprints for energy systems based on sacred geometry. The description matches fragmented reports from Templar trials, where accused knights spoke of a black book containing the measure of the earth and sky. Intriguingly, Rosslyn Chapel's famous musical cubes align with harmonic frequencies described in ancient Greek texts as the music of the spheres, a mathematical concept linking planetary motion to sound waves. Were the Templars custodians of a lost science, one that blended physics and spirituality? Perhaps the most radical theory involves the so-called Templar battery. In the ruins of a commandery near Troyes, archaeologists unearthed ceramic vessels with copper and iron fragments inside a setup eerily similar to the Baghdad battery, a 2,000-year-old artifact some believe was an ancient power source. While most scholars argue these were merely storage containers, fringe researchers note that Templar sites often feature inexplicable iron deposits in walls, as if designed to channel or block magnetic fields. Could their famed eternal lights, lamps said to burn without fuel in certain chapels, have been powered by something beyond medieval technology? The wildest threads of all lead to the stars. Templar churches across Europe display celestial maps carved into their floors, with constellations marked not as they appeared in the 12th century, but as they would have been aligned during the Bronze Age. At Chartres Cathedral, a labyrinth path mirrors the orbit of Venus, while Thoma's windows frame the star Sirius at precise intervals. These anomalies have fueled speculation that the Order preserved pre-Christian astronomical knowledge, perhaps even navigation charts for voyages far beyond the Mediterranean. One parchment recovered from a Spanish monastery shows a coastline unmistakably resembling North America, labeled Vinlandia, a name Viking sagas gave to the New World centuries before Columbus. Whether these theories point to advanced science or symbolic mysticism, one thread connects them. The Templars didn't just hoard wealth, they curated understanding. Their true treasure might have been the realization that knowledge, once lost, is harder to recover than any chest of gold. And if even a fraction of these claims hold weight, their legacy isn't buried in the ground but encoded in the very stones they left behind. Behind the Vatican's towering walls, locked away in climate-controlled vaults, lies one of the most closely guarded historical collections on Earth, the Secret Archives. Officially known as the Archivum Secretum Apostolicum Vaticanum, this labyrinth of shelves spans over 53 miles, holding everything from medieval papal bulls to trial records that could rewrite history. Among its most sought-after documents, the complete account of the Templars' rise and fall, as recorded by the very institution that both empowered and ultimately abandoned them. For centuries, researchers have petitioned for access to the Vatican's Templar files, hoping to find answers buried in centuries-old parchment. What little has been released is tantalizing. In 2007, the Vatican published a facsimile of the Chinon parchment, the document proving Pope Clement V privately absolved the Templar leadership of heresy. But here's what few realize: that single parchment was just one leaf in a forest of records. Entire ledgers detailing Templar financial transactions, correspondence between the Pope and King Philip IV, and even inventories of relics allegedly held by the Order remain under lock and key. The reason, officially, the Vatican cites preservation concerns and the fragility of medieval documents, but whispers among historians suggest some truths might still be too volatile to reveal. Consider the timeline. In 1312, after years of pressure from Philip, Pope Clement issued the bull Vox in Excelso, dissolving the Templars. Yet that same year, the Vatican's own records show a flurry of encrypted communications between Avignon and Portugal, where the order was swiftly rebranded as the Knights of Christ. What deals were struck? What knowledge or artifacts changed hands? A single line in a 1938 inventory hints at the scale. A chest listed as Arca Templarum was transferred from the papal treasury to an unnamed custodian in 1314. Its contents simply marked non-catalogatus uncatalogued. The archive's secrecy fuels speculation. Some scholars believe they hold proof the Templars discovered something beneath Jerusalem's Temple Mount so destabilizing, the Church chose complicity in their destruction rather than risk its exposure. Others argue the hidden files could exonerate the order entirely, revealing the heresy charges as pure fabrication. The most compelling clue might lie in an overlooked detail from the released Chinon parchment, a marginal note in faded ink referencing a libro negro, a black book of Templar secrets supposedly confiscated during the arrest. If it exists, its whereabouts remain unknown, but Vatican archivists have quietly acknowledged that certain folios from the early 14th century were set aside during a 19th century reorganization, their location now listed as in deposito, in storage. What makes the Vatican's silence so deafening isn't just the missing documents, it's the patterns in what's been selectively released. In 2012, researchers were allowed to examine financial records from Pope Boniface VIII's reign, only to discover redacted passages in every mention of Templar gold shipments. Even the archive's famed indices, the master catalogues used to navigate its collections, contain curious gaps. One entry for Templar assets in France directs scholars to a shelf that, when consulted, holds nothing but an empty binder labeled Riservato. Perhaps the real secret isn't what the archives contain, but who gets to decide when, or if, those truths ever see light. After 7 centuries, the Templars' legacy remains trapped in parchment limbo, guarded by an institution that once blessed their swords. Until those vaults open wider, history may have to settle for fragments, and the haunting possibility that some mysteries are meant to stay buried. From shadowy Masonic lodges to modern-day banking dynasties, whispers persist that the Templars never truly vanished. They simply went underground, passing their secrets through generations of initiates sworn to silence. The most famous claimants to this legacy are the Freemasons, whose rituals and symbols bear unmistakable parallels to Templar traditions. Walk into any Masonic lodge built before the 19th century, and you'll find floor patterns matching the geometric designs of Templar chapels, or ceremonial swords nearly identical to those excavated from Crusader-era commanderies. Even their hierarchy mirrors the Templar structure, with degrees like Knight of the East directly referencing the order's Jerusalem roots. But here's where fact and fantasy collide. While Freemasonry undeniably borrowed Templar imagery during its 18th century revival, no verified historical evidence proves an unbroken line of succession. The connection likely stems from Scottish stonemason guilds who worked on Templar-built sites like Rosslyn Chapel, adopting the order's symbols as homage rather than inheritance. Far more intriguing are the discreet aristocratic families who have quietly asserted Templar lineage for centuries. In Portugal, the Duke of Bragança, a descendant of King Denis who sheltered the exiled knights, still holds ceremonial titles linked to the Order of Christ, the Templars' official successor. Private archives maintained by the family contain 14th century land deeds specifying transfers of certain properties and privileges from the Templars to the crown, with cryptic margins referencing objects of spiritual custody. Similar claims emerge from French nobility. The Marquis de Rochefort's ancestral château near Carcassonne houses a chapel where the Latin phrase hic abditum isti, here it is hidden, is carved above a sealed crypt. Local historians note the family's ancestors were among the few French nobles who opposed Philip IV's purge and paid for it with confiscated land. Then there's the elusive sovereign military order of Malta, a chivalric organization recognized as the Templars' legal successor by papal decree. While they reject claims of guarding treasure, their archives in Rome contain meticulous records of Templar assets redistributed after 1312, including a curious entry about 32 chests removed from Cyprus under Venetian guard. Modern scholars like Dr. Elena Giuriotti argue this could reference the Templars' legendary naval archives, rumored to hold maps of Atlantic trade routes and mineral deposits. The Order's current leadership neither confirms nor denies, but their insistence on maintaining centuries-old banking secrecy laws raises eyebrows. The wildest theories orbit organizations like the Priory of Sion, a 20th-century hoax later sensationalized by the Da Vinci Code, or the self-proclaimed Knights Templar International, whose YouTube videos promise revelations for proven initiates. These groups thrive on manufactured mystique, often forging documents or rediscovering artifacts conveniently aligned with pop culture trends. Yet buried beneath the noise, genuine fragments persist. In Switzerland, the vault of the International Red Cross, an ultra-secure repository built beneath Geneva, reportedly holds medieval parchments donated by an anonymous patron in 1946. Leaked conservation reports describe the documents as financial instruments with Templar sigils, possibly smuggled out of France during World War II. What lends these claims weight isn't just the paper trails, but the patterns. From Lisbon to London, pockets of influence still echo the Templars' modus operandi: discrete networks, encrypted record-keeping, and an almost uncanny knack for navigating political upheaval. Whether any of them possess the treasure's location is secondary to a more profound truth. The real inheritance wasn't gold, but a blueprint for enduring power. The Templars understood that survival isn't about guarding vaults, but controlling the keys to how those vaults are remembered. And in that sense, their descendants, real or imagined, never lost the treasure at all. They simply redefined what it meant to possess it. Even after 7 centuries of searching, the Templars' vanished fortune leaves behind a trail of maddening loose ends, clues that twist into dead ends, artifacts that raise more questions than answers, and gaps in the historical record so glaring they feel deliberate. Take the mystery of the Temple Mount excavations. Contemporary accounts describe the knights digging beneath Solomon's stables for nearly a decade, yet no official inventory of their discoveries survives. Arab chronicler Ibn al-Qalanisi noted they hauled away carts of earth and strange artifacts in 1130, but aside from vague references to ancient writings, what they found remains a blank page. Did they uncover sacred relics, lost biblical texts? The silence itself is suspicious, like someone meticulously erased the paper trail. Then there's the enigma of the missing fleet. When King Philip's men seized Templar ports in 1307, naval logs showed 28 ships registered at La Rochelle. Only 12 were accounted for after the purge. Where did the others go? Satellite imaging of the Brittany coast in 2019 revealed wooden hull fragments matching Templar shipbuilding techniques near the Isle de Ré, but no cargo. Were these vessels scuttled to hide their contents, or did they successfully offload something before sinking? The answer might lie in a cryptic notation from a Venetian spy report describing eastern-bound Templar galleys seen off Crete in spring 1308, a full year after the order's dissolution. Perhaps the most baffling puzzle is the financial black hole. Tax records show the Paris Temple alone held deposits equivalent to nearly half of France's annual GDP. Yet when royal auditors combed through the books, they found only a fraction of that wealth. Some funds were traced to Italian banking families, but the ledgers contain bizarre discrepancies, like a payment of 60,000 gold livres to the Brothers of the Green Isle, an entity unknown to medieval historians. Was this a coded reference to Ireland, where Templar lands were quietly transferred to the Hospitallers, or proof the Knights funneled money into shadow networks? The physical evidence only deepens the confusion. In 1217, Templar architects rebuilt the fortress of Atlit in Palestine using a revolutionary concrete formula that still puzzles engineers today, a material so durable its remnants withstand seawater erosion after 800 years. Yet the recipe vanishes from records after 1304. Was this knowledge part of their treasure? Similarly, their famed chart Damiens, a financial ledger seized during arrests, contained pages of symbols later identified as early chemical notation, possibly describing alchemical processes. Those pages were lost during the French Revolution, leaving modern researchers to wonder, did the Templars guard scientific secrets alongside gold? And then there are the voices we'll never hear. Of the thousands of knights arrested, only about 20 trial transcripts survive intact. Most were misplaced from Vatican archives or reduced to ashes when Napoleon's troops looted Rome. The few that remain hint at tantalizing omissions. During questioning, Marshal Amaury de la Roche let slip that certain treasures were placed beyond any king's reach before abruptly changing his testimony. What did he mean? The answer died with him in a dungeon. These unanswered questions don't just fuel treasure hunts, they rewrite history's possibilities. Every missing ship, every burned ledger, every unexcavated tunnel suggests a design far grander than greed. The Templars didn't just hide wealth, they engineered a vanishing act so complete, it feels like a challenge thrown across the centuries. Maybe the real treasure isn't what they took, but the game they left behind, a puzzle where every solved clue reveals two more in its place. And after all this time, the odds are good that somewhere, beneath the stones of a forgotten chapel or the silt of a medieval harbor, the next piece of the mystery is waiting to tilt the board again. What makes the Templar treasure different from every other lost fortune in history isn't just the gold, it's the story. Think about it, pirate chests sink, tombs get plundered, empires fall and scatter their riches. But the Templars, they didn't just lose their wealth, they orchestrated its disappearance with the precision of a military operation. This wasn't a panicked scramble to hide sacks of coins in a cave. It was a calculated act of defiance, a final middle finger to the king who betrayed them. And that's why, 7 centuries later, we're still digging. We're not just hunting for treasure, we're trying to outsmart the ultimate puzzle makers. Consider how few historical mysteries straddle the line between fact and legend so perfectly. The Templars left us just enough breadcrumbs to keep us hooked: cryptic carvings in Rosslyn Chapel, vanished ships at La Rochelle, vaults beneath French castles sealed with mathematical precision, but never enough to solve the riddle entirely. It's the ultimate cold case, where every new clue, like that 14th century parchment pulled from Oak Island's mud, rewrites the story instead of ending it. Even modern science can't crack their codes. Our ground-penetrating radar and muon detectors hit walls, sometimes literally, that medieval engineering designed to endure. But here's the real magic of this obsession. The treasure stopped being about gold a long time ago. For some, it's the thrill of the hunt, the idea that a regular person with a metal detector might stumble onto history's greatest payday. For others, it's the conspiracy theories that the Templars guarded everything from the Holy Grail to alien technology. And for historians, it's a window into the medieval mind where faith, finance, and raw power collided in ways we're still untangling. That's the Templars' real legacy. They built a mystery so layered, so resilient, that it outlasted their enemies, their empire, even their name. So what do you think happened to it all? Did the treasure sink to the bottom of the Atlantic aboard a doomed Templar galley? Is it still buried in some undiscovered chamber beneath the French countryside, waiting for a farmer's plow to strike stone? Or just maybe did the Templars pull off the greatest trick of all, that the treasure was never hidden at all, just repurposed into something far more valuable than gold? Whatever your theory, drop it in the comments, because after 700 years, this story belongs to all of us now. The hunters, the dreamers, and everyone who loves a mystery that refuses to die.